morning. My name is Michael R. Roser, and I am co-founder and chief coaching facilitator at my company, Strategic Life Coaching, LLC. Please join me for this video and others at my website, abundantlifeslc.com. Well, thank you guys for your input, and as you see back here, we're starting to build something here that I think has some real value to all of us. And what I wanted to say specifically was, as we try to get through the COVID and we try to get through our lives as it exists, and the reality of that life is, I think we're going to find ourselves stuck in quite a bit of wind here. And that wind, I think, is coming from lots of different spots. There's emotional wind, spiritual wind, financial wind, and physical. And we've talked about a lot of this in our past videos and our conversations. And so what I thought would be helpful is where we talked last week about here's us in the middle, and there's some things that I think we simply cannot negotiate. And that is our core and what is our true self. And I've talked about it a lot. Guys, we all need to find out what's really going on inside of us, who we really are. And as I've mentioned many times, I think that is well worth the effort to try to find out what's really inside of us. What I found in my travels is there is a boundary that I have to create, which I don't want anybody to get in. That is my protective barrier. And I can open that barrier at times and become vulnerable, and I think that's healthy for the very dear and closest people in my life that I want them to know who I am, but I have to be cautious about that, as we've talked about. I believe the greater issue is the boundaries that we create outside of us that are permeable, that are not a solid line. And this, I deem, is our willingness not only to let ourselves come out, our true self, and what we really stand for and what we really believe in, but also to allow other people in our lives and their suggestions and comments and things that should be exactly as it is. It should be dashed. It should not be solid. So what do I mean by that? Well, I think that right now we could be anyway suffering from, for example, politicians that are very rigid in their beliefs, and they seem to be operating at the two extremes, the far left and very liberal people, and the far right, very conservative people. And they're so certain of their beliefs that they're really not getting along very well. And where I think most of us reside is in the middle, that we can be conservative and we can be liberal. And the problem is that the default mechanism is back to the extremes. And I believe that I want to take the extremes out of my life, because I found myself going from a manic person, I'm the greatest thing in the world, to an incredible POS, and I'll let you figure out what that acronym is. But the point was I was swinging violently between those two extremes, and therefore my life was extreme. And what I found in my travels and by doing this transformation plan, that I can now remain neutral. I can remain in the middle, and I can be affected because I'm willing to change, and I can move a little in each direction, but I don't have to violently go back and forth as what our political parties seem to want us to do. And the more they drift away from the middle, the more divisive it becomes, in my humble opinion. Well, in my relationships, and in how I treat myself, I don't want to live in the extremes. I can't any longer. And what I found was I was getting food and alcohol and other things in order to try to stop that swing, to try to feel a little more normal and a little more neutral. So it's very good that we would be open, but we have to create that boundary. We have to be willing to hit that pause button and to step back. And is taking this action or taking this behavior or thought, is that going to be good for me and what my core values are? Okay, so let's talk about it. So honesty, integrity, being willing versus willful, acceptance, being bold, having lots of love, happiness, serenity, and calm. Those are things that I want with me and I want in there, and I don't want to allow this outside wind, wherever it's coming from, to affect my core. But I do understand, and I have God in here with me now, that sometimes my filters change, and sometimes I'm not accurate, and I'm not the best of all things. So I need to be willing to allow other people to give me suggestions. So I talked about courage, I talked about willpower, I talked about the Stoic philosophy. But today specifically, I want to talk about resilience, because I think that is a skill that we have to have and that we need to learn in order to turn into this wind, whichever direction it seems to be blowing from. So the definition of resilience is, according to Webster, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, the ability of a substance or an object to spring back into shape, elasticity. I believe that that's huge. It's a measure of how much you want something, how much you're willing and able to overcome obstacles to get it, which is defined as emotional strength. So again, the Stoics, we were talking about that mental toughness. What's it going to take, and what skills do I need, if I don't have them, in order to face the winds that come up in our life, all of those setbacks. Financially, we talked about getting too much taxes or buying something that you really can't afford and then worrying and getting stressed over it. Spiritual, not turning to a power greater than yourself to try to help you out of a morass that you find yourself in. Emotional instability, that either is a creation of ourselves and the howling, growling, and prowling, in life, just fighting everybody and everything, or it's an actual condition like depression and anxiety and post-traumatic syndrome disorder that we need medications in order to get out of. And the last being physical. Do I have high blood pressure? Am I overweight? Am I tired, exhausted, from trying to turn and lean into this wind without having the strength to do so? So what I'm suggesting is that if we start to look at each one of these and where these winds are blowing and where they're coming from, we can start to develop skills to deal with it. And why do we want to develop those skills? Well, for me, I had the boundary here that I was falling for everything because I didn't stand for anything. Not because I wasn't a good person. I just didn't know what was inside of me. I didn't know what my core values were, and I was searching outside of me to try to gain those things. And so again, my strong suggestion is you take the time to find out what's going on inside yourself. Then you know what you're bringing to the table. You know what's near and dear to your heart and what you should be doing and what you want to do. And then we have to go face life with that. So I can no longer take my will and make life bend to my will. I have to bend in order to be able to deal with life. And that's what I'm talking about, this other boundary. I want resilience. I want to be stoic. I want to have mental toughness. I want to have courage so that if I do get some wind blown, and that actually, in my case, happens to be correct, Michael, you're addicted to alcohol. You have to solve that. It took courage in order to admit and accept that, and then gain some wisdom on, okay, how can I fix that? I didn't want to hear it, but I had to change. And then lastly, the physical part. As you guys know, I believe that very important. I believe that, as the definition says, that how much are you willing and able to overcome obstacles? If we're not in good physical shape, and if we're eating poorly and we're tired, we're not able. We might be willing, but we're not able to make this change. And so that's why I think all of these are important, and I appreciate your help as we further develop this into something that I believe that I've done in this transformation plan, and that can really help us change our lives and help us keep those protective boundaries. I called it a spiritual mask in another video and so forth. So I hope this is helping. It's helping me a lot. I guarantee you that. Take care, guys. Bye now.